Welcome back, everybody, to the PDPreps Podcast. Gus Morris, Kienan O'Doherty coming your way October 28th, Halloween week, Kienan. Spooky season here. We got a big slate of games here coming up, kind of a funky schedule, some Thursday games, some Friday games, some Saturday games. So a busy week of football coming up for us. Week 10 of the high school football season, fast approaching here. Playoffs only a couple weeks away. Very excited about kind of how things are shaking up with the playoff picture and everything right now. Definitely some interesting results this past week that changed definitely some things in my projections and just how, some teams are in, some teams are not. What if some first round, matchups look like? So still a lot of movement to come on that. But week 9 football season, had some doozies in it. Obviously we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, the Ukiah win over St. Vincent. Pretty big upset there, carries a ton of implications, not just for, the playoff race, but, also for the Red Red Empire Conference realignment coming up after, at the end of this year. Kind of a stunning upset. Also, again, something of note in that game too is the health and status of running back Mason Cattarelli. Exited that game early with an injury. Hopefully it's not too serious. Doesn't seem like it is, but definitely something to monitor with that. Maria Carrillo keeps winning. All of a sudden, we have a Ukiah Maria Carrillo, potential, league title game coming up here this week. So that's one of the highlights coming up here in week 10. I was over at the game of the week. Cardinal Newman keeps rolling. Their defense is looking as good as ever. Offense still has some stuff to work out, but winners again, 7 in a row. And then I think we're going to wrap up a little bit with a look back over to the NCL1 and some small school football with St. Helena trying for an undefeated season. Big game coming up this week that will decide the NCL1 title there. So a lot of stuff coming up this week, Keenan. Pretty crazy week, I know. Definitely some games that we didn't expect, some upsets, some big wins. Some chalky stuff, but I think the Ukiah St. Vincent game probably one of the more stunning games I think we've had, around the area this season.
Yeah, totally. As one St. Vincent coach told me during the sideline, the Ukiah at St. Vincent curse continues. Keep in mind the last time St. Vincent really lost a game was against Ukiah at home, a couple years ago. A game that were up 21-0 at halftime, I believe.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case this go round. And if you just want to get straight into it, if you want to do the poll
let's come back to that. But we're gonna touch on the North Bay football poll here first, and then we'll dive deep into that. There's so many angles and storylines and crazy stats and stuff, just from that game and just historically, how good St. Vincent has been and how again shocking that upset or it kind of was. So, jumping into the North Bay football poll this week, definitely some movement. Again, kind of coming off of that, the Ukiah win. Windsor keeps winning. Newman keeps winning. Definitely some changes up here, but no changes at the top. Marin Catholic, Cardinal Newman, San Marin coming in as our 1, 2, and 3 teams. Marin Catholic and Newman both staying exactly pat from what they were last week. Marin Catholic got 77 points, 5 first place votes. Cardinal Newman got Marin Catholic got 77 points, 5 first place votes. Newman got 75 points with 3 first place votes. So exactly the same voting breakdown as it was last week. San Marin staying put here at number 3 with 62 points. The big game coming up this week, obviously, last week was exciting, but, game of the year probably up here in the North Bay. Marin Catholic making the trip up to Santa Rosa to play Cardinal Newman on our 1-2 matchup. Also matchup of 2 teams that are ranked, I think, right now in the top 5 in the NCS. Game that will obviously have some playoff seeding implications for the Open/Division 1 playoff bracket coming up. So, huge game coming up this week. You'll be out there, but you'll have a game preview coming up here in a couple days. But always a huge game that people have circled. And this game, this year looks to be no different. Marin Catholic has won 3 in a row, coming off of a pretty tough non-league slate, and they're just kind of cruising right now in Adobe Play to kind of show us how good they are. So Newman too won 7 in a row. We'll talk about their 17-0 win over San Marin here in a bit. Newman and Marin Catholic holding on to those top 2 spots. San Marin, lost to Newman 17-0 over the weekend. they're 6-2 right now. They're actually still right there on the number 8 seed in the Open Division 1. So at the moment, they're still potentially facing down a rematch with De La Salle, just like they had last year for the first round of the playoffs. So 2 games coming up, or 2 games left for San Marin. They're going to be at Vintage this week. I think that game's going to be on Thursday night, one of those weird kind of Thursday night
Yeah.
games, because teams don't want to schedule games on Halloween. So some schools have decided to opt to have. I think we have 4 games or something like that on Thursday this week. So kind of an
Okay.
interesting schedule wrinkle. But yeah, San Marin. 2 games left again, starting this week at Vintage. Windsor coming in here, jumping back up here to number 4. They were number 5 last week. They got 57 points. They narrowly beat Vintage 17-10 in overtime. That was a tight game. I kind of expected that, honestly. Vintage is this big, tough front line. They run the ball. Windsor's kind of beat up on the front line, but they have pretty good offense. And yeah, it came down to the wire. I think if I remember correctly, I think Vintage came back, tied it up at 10-10 in the last couple of minutes of regulation, and then Windsor scored its first possession of overtime and then got a pick. I think it was Alonzo Leon got the pick to seal the game
Vintage
there.
decided to pass. Look at that.
And he decided to pass. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Windsor, good bounce back win for them, coming off of the losses to Newman and San Marin. So yeah, Windsor back here to number 4. Another riser this week is American Canyon. They're taking over here at number 5. Wolves are 7-1. They have 39 points. They routed Napa 50-0 last week. And another really big game coming up this week. Here playing at, or facing Casa Grande. Game's going to be at Petaluma High School on Saturday night at 7 p.m. Essentially for the RAC Valley title. So this game these 2 teams have had some really fun battles the last couple of years, in the V-Val and now in the RAC Valley. And once again, it's coming down to these 2 teams here towards, late in the season. Also a huge game for Casa Grande too, because I think they're 4-4 right now. If they can get to, again, if they can win out, if they can beat American King, if they can beat Petaluma, to finish the season out, they'll be league champions. So they would automatically, get in the playoffs. Well, they split those 2 games. If they lose to American Canyon and beat Petaluma or vice versa, yeah, there's a chance that they might not get into the playoffs at 5-5. So
Yeah.
huge couple of games here coming up for Casa Grande. American Canyon is pretty much a lock for the playoffs. So they're really just kind of playing for playoff seeding and for, to win this, to win the league title and stuff. But yeah, the Wolves, really good kind of game. I think they've been off or they haven't been off, but they've been, because of the bye, and then they had like the Justin Siena forfeit. I think they had a kind of multi-week gap. Same thing with Casa Grande. Casa Grande played its first game, I think, this past week. In like the last 3 weeks, they had their bye, and then a forfeit win, and so they've just been off for a while. So anyway, but yeah, big game coming up there. American Canyon coming in here number 5. They were number 6 last week. The big or one of the big teams that slid this week, not surprisingly, St. Vincent drops from number 4 to number 6. They actually got 38 points, so they're right behind American Canyon. But they lost to Ukiah, which was ranked number 10 last week, 27-6. We'll get into that game just here shortly, but probably a good spot to bounce back this week, playing at a winless Montgomery team on Thursday night. So should be a good kind of spot for St. Vincent to get right. Vintage here coming in at number 7 with 36 points. So think about that. 5, 6, and 7, 39, 38, and 36 points. So all those teams are super, super even. Yeah, Vintage was number 7 last week, still number 7 this week. Lost to Windsor 17-10 in overtime. Big game coming up again this week, playing host to San Marin on Thursday night. Number 8 this week is Ukiah, jumping up from number 10. Still kind of, this was we were kind of laughing about this over the weekend. This middle spot of the rankings is so tough because, you have Ukiah that has now beaten St. Vincent, but has also lost to Rancho Cotati. And then you have a St. Vincent team that's beaten American Canyon and beaten Rancho Cotati, but then they lose to Ukiah. So, the head-to-head results, only playing, I think, a small factor at this point. It's so hard to rank some of these teams that are towards the bottom.
Cluster, man. It's a cluster.
It is. It's a total cluster. So, St. Vincent or Ukiah coming in here at number 8 with 27 points. Again, beat St. Vincent 27-6 last week. Again, huge game coming up too this week, playing at Maria Carrillo. Probably for the driver, or probably for the. I'd say it's for the RAC Bay title over there. So, should be a very exciting game that I will be at on Friday night. Rancho Cotati slides again down to number 9 from number 8 last week. They got 13 points this week from our voters. Yeah, Cougars have had a tough go of things lately, still winless in league, losers of their last four. Big spot coming up this week. They're going to be playing at Windsor on Friday night. That, again, Ranch are kind of one of these teams too that, I mean, even if they don't get to 5 wins, there's a chance that, that they could still make it into the playoffs. But if they get to 5, that would definitely help their case a lot. So,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, so just a big couple of games here coming up for Rancho Cotati. And then rounding out our top 10 is Casa Grande. Gauchos actually slid this week. I think that was mainly because of Ukiah jumping up. But Gauchos go from 9 to 10. They've won their last 4 in a row. They were winless in non-league. They're now undefeated in league play. Had another gritty win, had to pull it out late over Tamalpais, 34-28, scored in the last 50 seconds. And then
They were
got
actually
it.
down quite a bit for the majority of the
They were
game.
down. I think they were down 9. I want to say heading into the fourth, and then
Yep.
they got a touchdown to cut it to I think a 1 or 2 point game. I think with 5 minutes left, and then they got the ball back. I think with like a minute 30, drove down the field, scored with like 50 seconds left. Really good pass from what I heard from Joey Serta to Jaden Pierre, like a 30-yarder or something like that to get the go ahead score. And they also went for 2. John Antonio, their head coach, told me they'd gone for 2 a number of times before the game, didn't get him. Then they finally get that one to go up 8 with just under a minute left, or go up 6 with just under a minute left, and then they got a big interception there. I think it was from Jackson Drum to seal it. So yeah, Costa's still just fighting and scrapping right now to stay alive, but they're still very much in the playoff hunt and in the league hunt. So biggest game of the year for them coming up this week. Again, hosting American Canyon on Saturday night. And then rounding out kind of our other teams receiving votes, St. Helena kind of still hanging around with 4 points. I'll talk about them here shortly. And then Sonoma Valley, also on a 7-game winning streak. They're having a great season again. They got 3 points this week. So, Keenan, anything stand out? I mean, like I said, it's that kind of cluster from 5 to 9 is just super hard to gauge. But I mean, again, I think it also shows you just how kind of even and balanced the parity is right now in North Bay football.
Yeah, no, totally. I think obviously the biggest question was how much Ukiah was gonna rise and how much St. Vincent was gonna fall.
Yeah.
Um, I think I had Ukiah rise all the way up to 6 and St. Vincent go to 7. I dropped them pretty significantly. Um, I was kind of wondering what everyone else thought too. That's why I love doing this poll, because we got so many opinions and so many eyes. It's funny, guys. I was telling you this over the weekend, but who would have thought that our top 3 would have been the easiest to figure out, and then the bottom of the rankings are like the toughest to do and are just doing our heads in week in and week out. I think American Canyon, they've been slowly rising over the past couple weeks. I think and I think that it's well deserving. They've been on a roll, since they lost to St. Vincent. So, I think 5 is a good spot for them. Yeah, but these things are still very fluid, folks. So this is obviously going to change, especially possibly after this week. After this weekend, it might just change even more dramatically. So these are still pretty fluid, but yeah, pretty solid North Bay football poll this week.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been kind of this 3-team race, but at the one spot, but, Newman and then San Marin, and then Newman has had it for a while, and then Marin Catholic has taken it over the last couple of weeks, and obviously, that'll all be sorted out this week, when they play each other head to head. And I mean, if I'm being honest too, those have been the top 2 teams in the entire area this year, and yeah, this game will definitely decide. I mean, again, this game / unless they play again in the first round of the playoffs, that'll kind of decide kind of
Even
our
last year.
end of season. Yeah, could happen again. I mean, they're kind of well positioned right now, so we'll see what happens. But
Are the stars aligning once more, guys? Who knows?
could
Who knows
happen.
what's gonna
Could
happen?
happen. I don't know if they would they would appreciate that again. I don't
Yeah, I
think
don't
these
think they
league
would
teams
either.
like playing each other, in the first round of the playoffs again. But we'll see what happens. So, with that, Keenan, let's dive in. Ukiah St. Vincent, you were there. It was. I mean, again, the result speaks for itself. 27-6. Ukiah takes down St. Vincent. Like you had
Stuns.
said
I
too.
would say stuns is the word. Stuns is the
Stun's a
word
good
for
word.
sure.
I mean, like you had said too, this is Ukiah. St. Vincent over the last 5 years has only lost twice at home. Both games coming to Ukiah. Obviously this year, the other one 2 years ago, that crazy comeback that they had. Um, this one was very different, obviously. To take us through what happens, I mean, from the jump, it seemed like it was going to be a different game.
Yeah, totally. First of all, let me preface this by saying and this was a big factor. Ukiah was completely healthy. They had everybody. And
Mm.
considering
And
they didn't
they've
have
not been like most of the year. Like Jeremy
no
Schwarm's been in their star linemen. They've had, injuries, like on the
Jordan,
offensive
yeah.
line,
So
defensive
first
line.
of all, so Jordan Schwarm came back. First game he's played since he got injured in the Rancho game.
Mm.
5 sacks for the kid. Okay,
Yeah.
transforms their defense tremendously.
Yeah.
When he's on the field, obviously,
All state
and
wrestling. He was the league
lineman of the
lineman of
year,
the
yeah,
year last year as a junior. I mean, yeah, this guy's a stud.
yeah. So yeah, so and this is from what I saw, right? So basically, both teams, went 3-and-out, but the main factor, obviously, to open the game, the main factor, Mason Catarelli injures his leg 3 plays into the game.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, the energy of St. Vincent's sideline was just sucked out. And Ukiah, it's not like they were obviously celebrating the injury or anything, but, Ukiah travels well. They have a good fan base. And, they were definitely rallying their sideline a bit. And, Bo David was actually as clinical as I've ever seen him with his wide receivers. Ryan Todd, Darian Dorsey, Zach Martinez is back.
Mm.
I think he had a 5-yard touchdown. It was either him or Dorsey to open up the scoring. Um, but, after Mason went down, you know, St. Vincent couldn't get anything going. It was like
Mm.
weird to see that from St. Vincent offensively. And I know you put a couple of points in here as well. It's the St. Vincent, they never score 6 points. The 6 points has been their fewest since a 27-0 shutout to Willits in 2019. Coming into this, they've been averaging 407 total yards, over almost 50 points a game, Gus. So this is like
Yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah,
Um,
that I think why this was so stunning. It wasn't like, when we've seen St. Vincent lose, it's been in shootouts or it's been in close games. Like, you don't see this happen. You don't see them score 6 points at home, especially with the way that they've been playing this year.
yeah.
400, they've like you said, they've averaged 407 total yards per game. They're putting up 50 points per game this year. I also had in here too. Like you said, they couldn't move the ball at all after kind of Mason, went out. And, I will the caveat to all this too is, again, St. Vincent is a Division 7 school. They've been dressing 24, 23 players all year. They have guys. It's late in the year. They have guys who are banged up. Obviously Mason got hurt. They've had other guys on the defense who haven't played, a lot of the year. It's like they don't have, the depth, for when some of these guys go out to really kind of fill them in and replace. So they've been an incredible team this year, and they've picked up, I think, some of their most impressive wins. This season, that I've seen them, over the last, this incredible 5-year span. But, every once in a while you are going to have a dud, and that's kind of what happened today. Is they kind of took that first emotional hit, with Mason going down, and then they just, couldn't really adjust and couldn't get anything going. And I'm sure again, Ukiah's coming in, they're fired up, they're trying to take down St. Vincent, which had a 20, the state's longest winning streak at 20 games. So Ukiah's kind of coming in here being like, no one believes in us. We're going to do this on their home turf again. And
Yeah.
just, the momentum shifted, and it was just a hard thing for St. Vincent to come back, and defeat.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the other thing is, like, Mason is obviously a tremendous player in his own right, and what he does on offense is amazing. But obviously, he's one of their best defensive players as well. So
Mm-hmm.
so him out of that personnel, it's a completely different look defensively. So basically, what came what happened was, Ukiah scored first. St. Vincent came back, immediately tied it. Jack Ellis, his first game back from injury, missed that Annalee game with a AC sprain, AC joint sprain on his shoulder. He came back, had a nice little comeback route for a TD in the corner of the end zone. And, St. Vincent's defense was doing what they were needed to do. They forced a turnover downs on Ukai's next drive, but, offense, like we just talked about, couldn't get anything going. They had to punt. And let me say this too. This was a very fast game. Like, Ukiah was holding, like, doing really well with their drives and just
Which
chewing the
also
clock.
makes this even more stunning, because St. Vincent never plays fast games.
No, that's what I'm saying. I was looking at the clock and I was like, wait, is it really been 8 minutes and are we already 1 minute 40?
Yeah.
This like never happens. And normally I'm on the sideline for like an hour at least. So halftime, was but the other thing is caveat too here is there was a blocked field goal on St. Vincent for a touchdown. So that also played a big factor as well. So it was 7-6 at halftime. Kind of a chess match, obviously, a lot of penalties going on. But then momentum just went like that because first drive of the third quarter, Mustangs get a huge interception off Gabe Casanovas, and then Bo David takes it himself from 6 yards out, and then boom, all of a sudden
This
it's
is this is
14-6.
this is the fourth quarter or the second quarter. Sorry.
No. Second half. Sorry, second
Oh,
half.
okay.
First drive of the second half.
Okay.
Um, immediate immediate interception. Bo David takes it in for 6, 14-6, boom. Next, St. Vincent possession. Ukiah has a big sack, one of Jordan Schwarm's 5 sacks on the day. On second down, makes it 3rd and long. And then right after that, boom, another interception. So 2 interceptions and 2 straight drives for Ukiah's defense. They came to play. Mustangs came back. Their defense, came up big with a turnover on downs. And now we're 3 or so minutes left in the third quarter. St. Vincent forced to punt again. Offense can't do anything. They can't get the ball through the air. Not to mention it's starting to rain a little bit. They can't get the ball through the air. Can't find anything on the ground. End of the third quarter, 14-6, which is, without probably your best player on the field, not a bad spot to be in going into the fourth quarter. Okay, 14-6, still kind of anybody's game, I would say. And then all of a sudden, St. Vincent forced to punt again, and Ukiah makes him pay. David, boom. Big shot to Darian Dorsey, 46-yard bomb. St. Vincent 6, Ukiah 21. And then, after that, it was just all she wrote, I would say, because Ukiah would score one more time, make it 27-6. And, at that point, you could just tell St. Vincent, just wasn't really in it anymore. And yeah, 27-6 was the final score. Obviously, we'll talk about the implications in a bit, Gus, but before we do that, I kind of want touch on the condition of Mason Cattarelli, what we're hearing, what the x-rays confirmed. He went to the x-rays after to the hospital to do x-rays. It's just a bone bruise, which is probably great news for St. Vincent. They feared it was a lot worse, maybe like a broken fibula or something like that. But to hear it's only a bone bruise, can only miss like a week, couple weeks. I know he's deemed out for that Montgomery game on Thursday, one of those weird Thursday games, but he's maybe a couple weeks out compared to, possibly the rest of the season, on the shelf, considering how close he is, guys, from that record that we've been talking about all year. I talked to you about this before. We might have just had the worst press Democrat jinx of all time. But Mason, Cattarelli, he's doing okay. Just a bone bruise is the status as of now. As of now, he's deemed out for that Montgomery game. We'll see how he's doing going forward. Obviously, we'll monitor his progress. But yeah, Ukiah coming in, man. Best game I've seen Ukiah play all year. They get the job done and gain a big advantage in that league title race.
So a couple things out on that too. So I was just going through some of Gabe Casanovas's kind of numbers. He's been the varsity starter at St. Vincent for the last 3 years, and they've obviously won 2 state titles and had this incredible run with him. But I mean, he's been a remarkable quarterback. I'm just going through his MaxPreps stats and stuff right now. I mean, if these are accurate, he's only had 3 games in his entire career with 2 or more interceptions. 2 of those have come against Ukiah, both in losses. So something about Ukiah and Paul Cronin and the system that he runs over there.
At St. Vincent. At St. Vincent
too, no less. Yeah. So kind of crazy, but yeah, I mean, again, this is a pretty stunning result. I do want to ask though too. So I obviously, I think we'll talk about some of the implications and stuff in here too, but this is kind of a crazy week in the North Coast section. There's kind of a lot of positioning going on right now to figure out kind of who is going to, who's going to occupy some of the spots in the bottom half of the open / Division 1 bracket and the top of the Division 2 bracket. Well, we've kind of played around with the idea of St. Vincent, being kind of one of these teams that's sort of in the mix as a Division 7 team. They've been ranked number 10. They're kind of like on the bubble a little bit. And then this week, kind of on Friday night, we had number 5 Cal lose. We had I think it was number 11 Campolindo lose. So I think we had the number 12 team. Valley. Yeah, we had San Ramon Valley lose. We had San Marin lose. So all of a sudden, you have all these teams that are kind of on the bubble who are all losing, and they all lost, the day prior. So, I mean, again, let's be clear too. Mason Cattarelli going down. St. Vincent couldn't really move the ball. But they went down. I think after the touchdown that Ukiah had early in the fourth. I think it was a 2-score game at that point. But we've seen St. Vincent come back and win these games before. They came back from 3 touchdowns, down against American Canyon. That was a big game, but like what did you kind of see in that regard? Because they pulled Gabe Casanovas, pretty early in the fourth, when they were only down 2 scores. I think there's a lot of people out there who are kind of saying like St. Vincent lost this game intentionally so that they wouldn't be in the Open Division 1. We're not saying anything like that, but this is one of these things of like, you do see a St. Vincent team that has been in these spots where they've had to come back before. And I think if this was a win or go home type of game, maybe we probably would have seen Gabe Casanovas, finish this game out. But I don't know. What did you see? What's your kind of take on all this? Because there's a lot of people out there who are kind of spinning this loss into something maybe more than it is.
Yeah, I think that. Well, first of all, I think the losing on purpose thing is a bunch of bogus. First of all, if there's one thing I know about Trent Herzog in that program, they hate losing. They cannot stand losing. Not, and I know they haven't had a lot of it over the last couple of years, but when they do lose, you can tell it affects them and everything like that. But go, kind of starting back to your original point about this Open NCS thing. You can kind of kiss that goodbye now, but coming into Saturday,
for sure.
coming into Saturday, they were kind of in a prime spot to possibly take one of those.
Prime spot as in, maybe ending up as the 8th seed in Division 1 and have to play.
Yeah.
But
as if prime spot for at the next Max Prep rankings, if they blew out Ukiah or something like that, to possibly take one of those spots in the next Max Prep Preps rankings. Would they have held it up until the brackets were released? I don't know. But the other thing is, I don't think anybody expected that many NCS teams to lose in the Open on Friday night. I don't think, San Ramon Valley probably. I mean, they were playing De La Salle.
Yeah.
San Marin maybe, but like, no, I don't think anybody would have expected Cal to lose
that was
big
an
as they
upset
did.
for sure. Yeah.
So, I don't think a lot of people expected that, but I think that's a bunch of bogus. I don't think that they lost on purpose, if that's what people are throwing around. Obviously, just based on the way things are shuffled and everything like that, and the way the system is set up. Yes, if they don't make Open, they have to go to D5 because of the going up 2 divisions thing.
Right.
But it's like the same thing if Cardinal Lumen and Marin Catholic, if they weren't in Open, the highest they could go is Division 4. It's just the way the system is set up. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting to watch. I from what I'm hearing, Gabe has possibly been, a little banged up or anything or something like that. But
Right.
I think it's one of those things where it's kind of a risk versus reward factor. Why, if you're already losing by so much, in the fourth quarter, or whatever the case may be, why would you, try to risk your starting quarterback going forward and things like that, especially when the rain was like pelting down at this point. So, I don't think, it definitely wasn't losing on purpose. First of all, let's throw that out the window too. Whoever's saying that is just like, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, let's be honest here. Every team wants to win no matter what. So, that's kind of my take on it. I know from an optics standpoint, it is pretty interesting, but, that's just kind of my take on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, saying that teams are losing games on purpose, obviously, like no one, like, it's a very heavy accusation to throw out there. But, when you do also look at kind of what this playoff system is, I mean, sometimes it does incentivize losing, I mean, you have a team that, you have a team. I mean, again, like I've kind of joked where I'm like, this is probably the best loss that Trent Herzog has taken in his entire career. He might not look at it right now, but it's like, they go from potentially having, I mean, I always thought it was a super long shot for St. Vincent to make it into the Open. And even if they had won, I still think that them ending up as the 8 playing De La Salle was still out of the, like, it was in the realm of possibility, but it still wasn't likely to happen, in my opinion. Now that being said, you lose this game, there's zero chance. You are not going to be an Open Division team. And now you go all the way back down to Division 5, which I'll be honest too, Division 5 is kind of is maybe one of the most interesting brackets that we have this year. You still have this team in Ferndale
100%.
who once again has blown out an opponent up north and
67-0
is 8-0, still have not allowed a touchdown this year, and now they're all of a sudden, I think they're 8 spots back of St. Vincent in the Max Preps rankings. So this is a team that has not played anywhere close to the type of competition that St. Vincent has, and they're kind of closing in on them. So the Division 5 bracket, obviously it's not as hard as Open Division 1, But, it's obviously still it's still going to be a tough bracket, I think, for St. Vincent to win. I still think they, that they should be the favorite, but there are some very good teams in that right now. And
Oh yeah.
funny enough, I actually have Casa Grande projected as a team to make it into Division 5 right
Oh,
now,
here we go.
which would be maybe one of the most interesting games that we've had in a long time, just because this is a matchup that people have wanted to see for a long time, and it's a matchup that has not happened. So, anyway,
Who one of the
that's
coaches has
down.
been very vocal about not playing the other
Yes.
team. So
Yes. Yes. So that is, so again, we still have 2 weeks to go. Costa still has to make the playoffs, but at this point, if they kind of hold on to where their ranking is right now, there's a chance that they could slide all the way down, down the D5. So anyway, that's down the road. But yeah, I mean, so let's kind of go a bit deeper here into the implications. But yeah, no. So I
good.
mean, I think the biggest part of it is that St. Vincent is now not going to be an open division team, which again I still
I
thought
think so too.
thought was going to be unlikely, but now it's obviously completely out of the equation. Um, the other interesting part of this too that I've been kind of like playing around with is, the Red Red Empire Conference is realigning after this year. This
Oh
is
yeah.
the second year of a two-year cycle. You have the upper division Adobe and the second tier Valley and the third tier Bay and the fourth tier Mountain. Well, at the end of this year, and I'm hoping to find out a little more about how this process is going to work, because I'm not sure if it's like the MBL where teams can petition to stay up or move down or however. But we're going to see some of these teams like a Sonoma Valley in the Mountain. They're probably going to move up. You're going to have a team like St. Vincent. They're probably going to move up a division. You might have a team like Rancho Cotati in the Adobe. They're probably going to move down. So that's what's really interesting, or that's going to be very interesting. But there's been some debate kind of like, all right, well, if St. Vincent goes undefeated again and like in league play back to back, league champions, they've beaten an Adobe team, they might beat, like if American Canyon, wins the league title in the Valley this year, well, they've beaten them too, so like, St. Vincent might have the body of work to say, hey, they deserve to go up 2 spots. They should be up in the Adobe. Well, now I kind of think with this loss, that also takes that off the table a little bit too. I mean, St. Vincent is going to move up regardless. They're going to be up
Agreed.
they're going to be up in the Valley for sure, I feel like. But now again, not only does this loss kind of keep them out of the Open, it might also keep them out of the Adobe too, which, they want to kind of play tougher competition. And I think a lot of people in the North Bay kind of want to see them, really challenge themselves, against the Windsors and the San Marins and the Newmans and the Marin Catholics. And, now again, if they're not in the same league, I don't see that happening, especially kind of with how the playoff format has changed and regular season wins are going to have so much more weight here going forward. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's not just the Open, the Open Division I, playoff aspect. It's also, there's some local implications too of like, all right, so
Yeah.
now, St. Vincent might just go up to the Valley, and then who from the Valley is going to drop, and then who from the Adobe is going to drop. So this could kind of have this bigger butterfly effect that we're just not seeing yet. So maybe we look back in 6 months when when the league is realigned and been like, all right, well, because of that loss, this is why this is looking like this. So yeah, just anyway, it's interesting. Again, not a result that we expected in any way, shape, or form. And again, I do feel like, St. Vincent will be in a good spot. No offense to Montgomery, but they probably don't need Mason Cattarelli to, take care of Montgomery. Vikings are having a tough year. They're 0-8. They're having some growing pains and stuff. So probably a good spot to get him some rest. But then, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's, there's a pretty big game coming up to finish the season, against Maria Carrillo, who, St. Vincent has taken care of Carrillo pretty handily the last couple of years, but Carrillo's kind of having a good little year, and they have a big game coming up this week. And if they can beat, take down and beat Ukiah, that'd be a big upset as well. But, Carrillo has been one of these teams that, you saw them in action this week. They have this kind of emerging star. How do you pronounce his name? Is it Estefan? Estefan?
Estefan.
Estefan Ramirez.
They call him Este.
Este. He's been dynamic, total lighting rod for them this year. You got to witness him firsthand though, this past week, and you were impressed, obviously.
I didn't. So first of all, because we've been running his name around for the past couple of weeks because of how good he's been playing, and I didn't realize he was that big or that fast. He's got those long strides, but I mean, he's a game changer, Gus. That's basically what it is. He can flip a game on its heels. I mean, obviously he had three receiving touchdowns. I think I put down 240 receiving yards on 7 catches, plus a 62-yard touchdown return, punt return, touchdown. Ugh. God, word jumbles.
Yeah, Max Preps has him at like they don't have any of the special team stuff, but they had him at 268 all-purpose yards, and that's without kick returns or punt returns. So
yeah, so add a 60, 62, 65 yard punt return for a touchdown, and I mean this kid's a game wrecker. And, I was super impressed with him. Obviously, he's vocal to the offense, but I'm also really impressed with how Cooper Bluestone, their quarterback, has kind of come along. He's been the starter for the past 2 years.
I
He
think
started
three
as a
years,
sophomore. Yeah,
three
so
years.
third year
Yeah.
starter. So yeah, he's been really well, and him and Ramirez link up incredibly well. I mean, do they have the Logan Bruce that they had last year? No, they don't. Obviously, but you know, as the Ramirez can play pretty much every position you ask of him. And he's just so quick or so fast, when he gets going. The first play was like a 98-yard touchdown pass, first play of the freaking game. 98-yard touchdown pass, just perfect seam route or post route, wide open, nothing Santa Rosa could do. So it's going to be fascinating, watching these last two games for Korea, how they really stack up, to this competition. We saw what they could do against Annalee when they put 60 points up against Annalee, who at that time, we thought were, I think they were in our rankings at one point.
All right.
For crying out loud. So, it's going to be fascinating to see what Korea can do against Ukiah, and then to finish off the season at St. Vincent. So it's going to be fascinating, the finish to this REC Bay race. That could be one of those things where three teams cancel each other out, and we have a three-way
Yeah.
tie atop the league standing. So it's going to be fascinating, Gus. I know you're going to be there Friday night. I can't wait for you to see this Ramirez kid, dude. He is something else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of weeks, I mean, so it was kind of an odd start to the year for Korea. I think they were 2-2 to start. They lost to Redwood by 21. They lost to Petaluma by 14. And then since then they've their offense has been rolling. I mean, they have been allowing some points, but like when you're scoring, 37, 60, 30, 41 points, you're going to be in a lot of these games. So I know that they had that almost let down spot against Montgomery. They had to score that late touchdown. I think it actually was Ramirez who scored that touchdown too. But well, and then even in this one, I know like Santa Rosa was kind of banged up, and they kind of hung in the game for a little bit. But I mean, again, this Korea team has been playing super well, and at 6 wins right now, whether they win the league or not, they're still going to be a playoff team no matter what. So really good kind of year for them, especially coming off of last year where they were also quite talented, but they were super senior heavy, and they had this really great, obviously, Logan Bruce, their star running back, and they have all this talent, on the line. They graduated a lot of guys, this year, and had a lot of question marks and just pieces that they weren't quite sure what they had. I remember talking to head coach Jay Higgins before the year, and he's like, yeah, I think we're kind of young and, a lot of new faces, but, I think we got some guys. And Ramirez was for sure one guy he talked about. I think he missed most of last year with an injury. I think he only played a couple games and then was like out for, I think, the latter half of the year. So getting him back obviously has been huge. But yeah, I'm going through his numbers. I mean, again, these don't have his special teams stats on him, or his kick returns, his punt returns or anything. But his last 4 games, his first 3 games of the year, he, the most yards he had was 130 total. Well, starting in the Milpitas win, he had 282 total yards. And against Annalee, he went for 232. Montgomery, he only had 98, but then Santa Rosa, he had 268. And again, this is also not counting what, he had on special teams. But he's also doing it in like a number of ways. He had 180 rushing yards against Annalee. He had 245 receiving yards, against Santa Rosa. So this guy is a kind of a dual threat guy who can do it on both ends. Scoring wise too, he's just finding the end zone a ton right now. He has, what is this? He's 10 touchdowns over the last 4 games. Well, actually, yeah, and he scored a couple actually. Sorry, in against Santa Rosa. They don't have those. Oh yeah, there we go.
He had four total touchdowns against Santa Rosa.
So he has had 14 touchdowns in his last 4 games. So that's pretty good, I'd say. So,
not too bad.
So yeah, I mean, yeah. So this Korea team has been kind of fun to watch the last couple of weeks. Yeah, definitely excited to kind of catch them in action this week, against Ukiah. So, yeah, big game. I mean, honestly, my first time seeing both those teams this year. Ukiah kind of has all these pieces, and I'm curious to see kind of how Bo David looks and how they're playing, right now. So kind of, 2 hot teams playing each other at the right time of the year. So excited to see how that one goes. But All right, Caleb, let's move right along here because we're about 40 minutes in already, and I haven't even talked about my game, which was our game of the week last week. So I guess we'll kind of run through this pretty quickly here. But yeah, Cardinal Newman again, winner 17-0 over San Marin. They've won 7 games in a row. I think Cal High Sports actually has San Marin or Cardinal Newman ranked as the number 26 team in the state right now. Now again, a lot of that is because they have the head-to-head win over Grant. Grant, I think, is ranked number 27 right now in the state. So just by way of that head-to-head win, Newman is super high up. But again, they have rattled off some pretty impressive wins the last couple of weeks. They took care of Windsor to open up league play. They took care of San Marin, honestly, pretty handily last week. It was a total defensive struggle to start the game. Newman's offense again is just still having a bit of a hard time moving the ball. They actually only put up 142 total yards of offense in this game, or 141, sorry, which I think is the second or third fewest they've had in a game all year this year. But
Yeah.
again, it's been their defense that has again been kind of their calling card, and it's been their calling card the last couple of years. But they got on the board, Carmen Guevara was flush from the pocket, had to throw up kind of a deep prayer on fourth and 6, I think, from San Marin's 32, late, I think it was in the second quarter, and just right into the hands of Jonah Bertoli to get the scoring started. But it was only 7-0 at that point. Newman actually, Cordell Strain actually got an interception on a San Marin quarterback, Daniel Rolovich's very first play of San Marin's next possession. Newman had great field position, could have had a chance to add another score, at least a field goal, ended up stalling out, missed a field goal. So it was 7-0 at halftime. Second half was kind of more of the same. And really it was like, I think Newman opened with an empty possession, and then San Marin also kind of had an empty possession and had to punt back to Newman. Well, Cordell Strain again had one of the most impressive plays I think I've seen this year. He caught the ball at about the 28, had to back up with a couple defenders coming in his face. Took off from the 25 eventually. I think I counted. He broke 7 tackles on his way for a 75-yard touchdown return. So a huge game for Cordell. He was my player of the game. He had the that long touchdown return. He had the pick. Kayvon Penny also had a pick. Newman shut out San Marin. I think for just I think it's the first time they've been shut out since I think it was the COVID-shortened 2021 year. Which is kind of crazy. I mean, this is a San Marin team that just is known for putting up points on the board and having these dynamic quarterbacks. Rolovich is a San Jose State Division I commit and held them with no points and I think to under 100 yards in the game. So just a really super impressive, defensive effort for Newman. But, since their opener against Manteca, Newman's allowed just 49 points, over their current 7-game winning streak. So that's, a touchdown a game, that opponents have been scoring. Most points they've allowed since the Manteca game was against Windsor, that 20-35 win or 35-20 win that they had. But, that stretch has also included 2 shutouts in 4 games, holding opponents, under 10 points. So, this defense is lights out, super good. But again, it's the offense that has kind of been it's been their weak point. I'll just say that it's been their weak point the last couple of weeks. That's Frank McManus, their head coach, has been talking a lot about how he's like, well, really, we've had, our offensive coordinator kind of only got here 3 weeks before the regular season began. He was off doing some work, and I don't know what specific kind of work he was doing, but he was doing work with some NFL teams, helping their offenses or their offensive staffs and stuff. So he kind of got in late. So Frank he's not, worried about the offense. He's like, hey, just based on, if we had a full spring, if we had a full summer, he's like, this is kind of where we would be. But, we're just 9 games, through the season at this point, or 8 games, through the season or whatever. So he's like, we're still on schedule. We just started the schedule a bit late. So, he's not too panicked about it, but this is a thing where you have your biggest game of the year coming up. You're playing Marin Catholic, a team that has been pretty dynamic on both sides of the ball here to open up league play and has had some really impressive, albeit in losses, showings against some really talented teams. A 1-point loss to Manteca, a team that beat Newman by 33, a 1-point loss to Intercom, a team that's, I think, on the bubble of the top 50 for the state. I think it's also 7-1, So this is a Marin Catholic team that I think is probably trending way up in the right direction. And I think if Newman's offense kind of, continues to I guess sputter, for lack of a better word, this could be a tough week coming up this week. I've also heard too that starting quarterback LT Redamosa probably not playing this week. And maybe that's a smokescreen coming from the staff or coming from whoever, but I've heard he's maybe targeting the vintage game, week after Marin Catholic, to return. So, again, Newman is a playoff team. They're going to be open division. But, with an offense that is having some trouble moving the ball a little bit right now, it's kind of like Rancho Catalia, a bit. They have a great defense. They have not been able to move the ball too much,
Yeah.
So, their defense is kind of is pretty great. It's going to keep them in a lot of games, but once you get into this open division, for the playoffs, if you don't want to be one and done, you got to put some points on the board. So, still some stuff to work with for Newman. Again, we'll obviously see what this week is going to be. Probably the biggest test that they've had all year. Obviously since Grant, obviously since Manteca, but heading into the playoff stretch here, this will be probably a game that'll show us a lot about what Newman's potential could be in the postseason. So yeah, it's again, another win. Newman did what it had to do to get in the win column, but other than that, it's still some things to clean up here, late in the season.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think coming into this week, I think one of the biggest things was how Newman was going to start. They haven't started well the past couple games, especially in the first quarter. They've only scored 37, first quarter points, 30 of them coming against O'Dowd, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like they needed to get off to a much better start this week. And they need to get off to a much even better start, against Marine Catholic, because that's a team you can't afford to fall behind early on. So Newman's slowly offensively, slowly but surely getting it together, Gus, maybe. But
I
kind
know.
of.
I mean, last couple of weeks it's been a little rough. I mean, they've scored. They had that trick play touchdown against Rancho Cotati 2 weeks ago. They only scored one offensive touchdown. This week, or this past week. Malachi Path, their dynamic running back has not been able to get much going. And again, I think it's also a credit due to the good defenses they played. Rancho is a good defense. San Marino's a good defense, so, but it is just one of these things of like, hey, if we want to have a bit of a run here in the open division playoffs, we got to get this offense going a little bit. So,
Yeah. And we kind of talked about, implications with St. Vincent. This Marine Catholic game coming up here for Cardinal Newman is going to have huge implications for the Open. I mean, we've seen throughout the Max Preps rankings over the last couple of weeks, they're not afraid to make these big changes. San Ramon Valley was at 4. They lost to number 5 Cal. They ended up dropping like 5 spots or something like that.
yeah, that was. I mean, I don't think we've seen a drop like that since then. And I mean, even last week, we saw Newman, who was ranked number 4, beat San Marin, who's ranked number 8, and San Marin didn't drop at all. So I
Right.
don't necessarily know. I mean, if Marin Catholic is ranked number 5 and Newman's ranked number 3, if MC ends up winning this week, I don't see a huge drop. I mean, I could maybe see Marin Catholic going to 3, Newman maybe falling to 4, maybe 5 or something like that. I could just see him flipping spots or something. So we'll see. I mean, again, game still has to be played.
I will say it's pretty unpredictable. It's been unpredictable. I'll say that.
It has been for sure. Yeah. So we just have no idea, but play the game, see what happens, and we'll see what the results look like when it's all said and done. But wrap it up here, Kienan, with St. Helena. A little small school love going on, but Saints are cruising right now.
Second straight week we've talked about St. Helena.
I know, yeah. Our this is the former school that I covered pretty intimately back when I was working for the Napa Register. I was the Up Valley beat reporter, so I covered St. Helena and Calistoga football, or just sports in general, pretty closely. So I have some good friends over there. Yeah, Saints. Shout out to the Saints. They're having a great year. They had that really tight, grinded out last second win over Middletown to start the month, and since then they've just been dominant. 41-7 winners over Fort Bragg the week after, bye week, and then 36-7 winners over Clear Lake this past week. Sets up essentially a title game here against Willits coming up this Friday night. I think we're going to have a freelancer out there. It should be a really fun game. Willits, I think, is also 7-1 on the year. There's something really good. Yeah. Pulling it up now. 7-1 on the year for Willits. They are currently 1 game back of St. Helena in the playoff standings. Saints are obviously undefeated. They're 8-0 overall, 6-0 in league. Willits 7-1 overall, 5-1 in league. So yeah, this game will have a lot of playoff implications, or will have obviously league race, implications here, especially because Willits has also lost to Middletown. So I don't know how they do all the tiebreakers and stuff like that. I'm sure it's by points scored against or something like that. But yeah, I mean, again, Saints can take care of business, win the league championship here with a win tonight. And then they play Upper Lake to finish out the year. Upper Lake, I think, is winless. So again, you never want to say a game is probably going to be an automatic win, but I think that'll probably be a pretty automatic win for them. But so St. Helena, if they can get past Willits this week, they have a good chance, I think, to put together their first undefeated regular season since 2011. So it's been a long time for the Saints. But this team's super fun. They have a lot of good veteran players. Teams who were, learned a lot, from last year. Some younger players who have come up, and big contributors. We've been talking about Dean Sauer for the last couple of years. Johnny Covarrubias, who's their quarterback, who's back again. They have some good defenders like Ben Breaksman. They have another good kind of up and coming sophomore who could be a name to watch, in Latif Basile. I think that's how you pronounce it. So they have some fun pieces, and currently, since we're on this playoff projection kind of bandwagon right now a little bit, but I currently have the Saints right now ranked as so they're 36 right now in the entire section, which is pretty dang good for a Division 7 team.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at some of these Division 7 teams we have that, like, how highly they are ranked. Like St. Vincent's number 14, Ferndale's number 22, St. Bernard's number 28, Salesia's number 30, St. Helier's number 36. Like, that's 5 pretty, like, top 40, pretty solid.
Shout out to the small schools, man.
Teams. Small, yeah, but this is also why we're saying that the Division 5, even the Division 6 bracket could be pretty interesting. But at this point, 3 of those Division 7 teams are up in Division 5. Salesian is the top seed right now in Division 6, and St. Helena is the 3rd seed in Division 6. So depending on what happens with some of the Division 3 teams and seeing how many of them end up making the playoffs and how many of them, because there are a couple teams who maybe could drop out, who maybe could go up to D4 or something. Depending on that, we could have, 4, maybe 5 Division 7 teams up in Division 7 teams up in Division 5, which would make the Division 5 race even more fascinating and interesting. So, but the Saints, I think they probably want to stay in Division 6. I think a lot of these smaller school teams wanted to maybe stay away from St. Vincent just because St. Vincent is so much higher ranked and talented. And also teams want to stay away from Ferndale too, because Ferndale's.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's not just the Saints, or it's not just the Mustangs. I think it's St. Vincent and Ferndale. People are looking at those two, being like, don't want to play them. We'll stay down in D6. So, yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out. But again, big game coming up for the Saints this week. Excited to see kind of how it shakes out. But yeah, shout out to the Saints having another great season this year, and just good to see for a small school having some success, and will be playoff bound this year. So
yeah, sneaky atmosphere up there too. Always a little solid atmosphere over there in St. Helena.
Very fun.
Yeah, very fun. So we'll definitely have someone out there, hopefully, to cover that one. Fascinating. NCL1 is always just such a fascinating race because it's kind of they all kind of knock each other out. It's just, and I think you said this last week, Gus, but it's also untraditionally like a large division or a large league too in terms of how many teams are.
Oh yeah, I think I think it is the biggest league that we have in the entire North Coast section. I think there's 9 teams in it, and I think they're going to be breaking it up. From what I've heard, I think there's a proposal, but kind of with the league right now, to break it up into 2 different divisions. I thought it was kind of like the NBL Oak and the NBL Redwood, where you have a top division or a lower division, but actually it sounds like it's more of just like a geographical thing. So there'll be like a North and a South division. So your teams like Fort Bragg and Cloverdale and Upper Lake will all be in the North, and the South will be, teams obviously located further south. So that makes sense. Also, it's a smart thing for them to do, because when you have 2 divisions, you can get 2 league champions, and league champions are automatic qualifiers for the playoffs. So you can actually get more playoff teams in too.
That's true.
Smart move there for the NCL one. Also, not the first time. They've had 2 divisions before, but I think it's a smart move to go back to that, kind of with this new competitive equity playoff system that's in place right now. So
yeah, I agree.
Anyway, it's small school football. Again, there's not the biggest kind of audience for it, but I think it does play a lot of impact into what the rest of the section looks like. And yeah, they play a bigger role than I think a lot of people realize when it comes to the broad scope of what happens in the NCS. So
I agree.
Anyway, but I think that's all we got for you guys this week. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Longer podcast for us this week. Again, we have a lot to talk about. We're gonna have a lot to talk about next week. 3 potential league deciding games coming up. I'll be at 2 of them. Kienan will be at Marin Catholic Newman. It should be a really fun week 10 of football action here coming up, and we'll have tons of preview coverage. Kienan will have a game preview coming up for MC Newman. We'll have our picks and previews out and stuff like that too. I got a 3-game lead right now on Keenan in the picks game, so coming up here in the last couple weeks. But again, last couple weeks, a lot of big matchups. I think we'll have some differing picks coming up, so we'll see how it goes. But any last thoughts before we let the people go, Keenan?
Nope, nope. Always got to keep the picks game interesting, Gus. Can't always keep going the same way. Got to make the people like it. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching, listening, however you consume this content. Appreciate you guys for sticking around for as long as we stayed on today. But thank you guys again, and we will see you guys next week.